Hi there, this is Jeanette for Whimsy Stamps, and today I have some elegant cards to share with you. These cards were made using Whimsy Stamps' new metal dies, so you can see beautiful die cuts and just some really nice cardstock to create some elegant cards that are simple and clean, but still pretty to send out. And I made sympathy and wedding cards using this card style. So I'm going to share with you how I did this. The first thing is this beautiful cherry blossom panel. This is sort of the focal of the card. And then Whimsy has a new set of dies with these scripted words, sympathy and heartfelt condolences. And I used some really nice paper. That white paper sort of has a metallic sheen to it. And this blue paper has a sort of embossed linen texture to it. So I'm just placing it in my paper trimmer and cutting it in half. And I'm just going to do 2 cards with this paper, but you could certainly do quite a few production style. I placed the paper back into my trimmer, and I'm just using that groove and my bone folder to create a nice crisp fold line. Just go over it a couple of times, and then I'll have an A2 sized card base, and this white paper that has this beautiful sheen to it, I'm just cutting it to size so that it will fit into my big shot. So I'll just fold over the card base and make sure that I put a nice crisp line on it. I had to sort of check because there is a rough sort of linen texture to it, and it's rougher on one side, it's more evident on one side, and I wanted that on the outside, so I had to make sure that I was folding these the right way. Now to cut out the dies, I'm going to be using my big shot with a magnetic plate, my cutting pads, and I'm also adding this metal shim plate, and this is going to make sure that it is really easy to pop out all the excess paper once everything is cut. I did cut out the words that came with the sympathy. There was heartfelt and condolences. I did cut those out because I thought I might use them. In the end I didn't, but I'm going to keep them for another project. So this cut beautifully, but now you do have to remove all the sort of excess negative space. Or negative paper, I'm not sure exactly, but you know what I mean. I'm taking out the excess pieces. So just gently sort of bend your cardstock a little bit and it should pop out really nicely, especially if you've used that metal shim. And if there was any really tiny pieces that I didn't want to force or play with too much, I just took my Tim Holtz crafting tool, so it has a nice sort of pointed end, and I just sort of punched out anything that was too difficult or too small to get out. So that was very easily done, and you get a beautiful, beautiful die cut panel. Now for the word, I just had to sort of poke out anything that was still within the letters, like in the S here. Just poke those out. And you have your beautiful word cut out as well. Now, I did feel that it was a little plain on the card. It needed a little extra something. So what I did is I added an embossed sort of border around the top of the card. And I'm going to show you how I did that. I put it into my scoreboard and just marked, you don't have to, but I did to remember where I wanted the border to be. You just have to make sure it's sort of equal on every side. And when you're scoring the edges here, or the sides, make sure you don't go too far down. You don't want to go past where it's going to meet up. So now I can use those first scores to know exactly where I have to start. I'm going to score up and down, and then I'll just turn it and make sure that the corners meet nicely. So this is really easy. You could make more than one of these lines. I made a simple line, but you could actually make 2 if you wanted, or 3. Really, the possibilities are up to you. So that just added just a little extra something to keep the card from being too plain. So now I'm going to have to glue this down. So I am adding multi-matte media to like all the flowers and all the sort of ends of all the curlicues and the leaves to make sure that they're going to stay adhered down to the paper. Now I'm using the multi-matte media with the precision tip that you can buy separately, and that really helps to add it precisely along all the tiny little edges. You could also use the Zig glue pen, which I would have used, but I couldn't find mine. I don't know where it's disappeared to. So you could use one or the other. I guess the key is to make sure you use something that is going to dry matte and is going to dry clear. So once I had added that to everything, I just adhered it down to my card base, making sure it was nicely aligned. And then I'll just put a clear mounting block on top to make sure it stays flat when it's drying. And I'll do the same thing with the sympathy. I will make sure I'm adding it to all the ends of all the letters to make sure that it's going to adhere down nicely. And then I'll just pop that up into the center here. And I'll put my mat down. I also decided to make a wedding card. So I used some pink cardstock. You can see there I'm showing you my two sympathy cards. I used some pink cardstock. I switched up where I put the cherry blossom panel, put it at the top. I used the scripted word love die, and I'm adding a few little pearl embellishments to this card. The paper that I used, I've left links at the bottom of this video if you want to know what colors I used and where I got it. And I just used some printer paper here to cut 4 by 5 1/4 pieces that I'm going to adhere into the inside of my card, and that's where I would write my salutation. So it just makes it look a little bit more elegant, another added touch. And you could actually, write the salutation before you adhered it even, so that, there's no worries about mucking it up, which I do sometimes. So there's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it would be to cut, this is 8 by 5 1/4, and then scoring it in half, and then folding it, and then that would go inside your card. You would need to adhere both sort of sides. You'll see in a minute what I mean. You would put adhesive, this is how it's going to fit in. You put adhesive on both sides of where the fold is, and then just put it in. So that's another way of doing it if you want. So there are my cards. They're all done. As I said, you could do more of these assembly style and create a whole bunch at one time. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and I hope it gave you some ideas on how to make some elegant cards of your own using metal dies. Thanks so much for watching. A full list of supplies and links can be found below this video or on my blog.